Céad Míle Fáilte. Welcome to the treasured tales of Ireland, a place where you can come and listen to the many myths, legends, folk, and fairy tales of the Emerald Isle as a way to keep the stories of old alive. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and I will be your teller of tales. I hope you will join me each week for new tales, and if you enjoy my work, then like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And check out one of my other playlists for more tales. Before we start, you should know that if you're using closed caption, that many of the Irish names that you see sound different than what they look. But we have tried very hard to say them properly. Now, let's get started. Today, we continue with the story of the Tuatha de Danaan from the mythological cycle, in which we learn about the Reign of Bres. Episode 2. Nuada won the battle. He lost his arm in it when Shrang lopped it off. And because of that loss, he came into troubles and vexation from his people. For it was a law of the Tuatha de Danaan that no man that was not perfect in shape should be king. And after Nuada had lost the battle, he was put out of the kingship on that account. And the king they chose in his place was Bres. He was the most beautiful of all the young men, so that if a person wanted to praise any beautiful thing, whether it was a plane or a dun or ale or a flame or a woman or a man or a horse, they would say, "It is as beautiful as Bres." And he was the son of a woman of the Tuatha de Danaan, but who his father was, only she knew. But in spite of Bres being so beautiful, his reign brought no good luck to his people. For the Fomor, whose dwelling place was beyond the sea, or some say below the sea westward, began putting tribute on them so they would get them under their rule. It was a long time before the Fomor came to Ireland for the first time. They were dreadful to look at and maimed, having but one foot or one hand, and they were under the leadership of a giant and his mother. There never came to Ireland an army more horrible or more dreadful than that of the army of the Fomor. And they were friends with the Fíorbaalaigh and content to leave Ireland to them. But there was jealousy between them and the men of Jah. They had put a hard tax on them, a third part of their corn, of their milk, and a third part of their children, so that there was not smoke rising from a roof in Ireland, but was under tribute to them. And Bres made no stand against them, but let them get their way. Bres himself put a tax on every house in Ireland of the milk of hornless dun cows, or of the milk of cows of some other singular color, enough for 100 men. And one time, to deceive him, Nectan singed all the cows of Ireland in a fire of fern, and then he smeared them with the ashes of flaxseed, the way they were all dark brown. He did that based on the advice of the druid Fingal, son of Fiend Imas. And another time, they made 300 cows of wood with dark brown pails in place of udders, and the pails were filled with black bog stuff. One day, Bres came to look at the cows and to see them milked before him, and Cian, father of Lugh, was there, and when they milked it, bog stuff was squeezed out, and Bres took a drink of it, thinking it to be milk, and he was not the better of it for a long time. There was another thing against Bres. He was in no way open-handed, and the chief men of the Tuatha de Danaan grumbled against him, for their knives were never greased in his house, and however often they might visit him, there was no smell of ale on their breath, and there was no sort of pleasure or merriment in his house. and no call for their poets, or singers, or harpers, or pipers, or hornblowers, or jugglers, or fools. And as to the trials of strength, they were used to see between them champions. The only use their strength was put to now was to doing work for the king, Oma himself. The shining poet was under orders to bring firing to the palace every day for the whole army from the island of Maud. And he was so weak for want of food that the sea would sweep away 2/3 of his bundle every day. And as to the Dagda, he was put to building raws, for he was a good builder, and he made a trench round Bres. And he used often to be tired at the work, and one time he nearly gave in altogether for want of food. And this is the way that it happened. He used to meet in the house of an idle blind man, Cridabel, his name was, and that had a sharp tongue, and that coveted the Dagda's share of food, for he thought his own to be too small beside it. So he said to him, "For the sake of your good name, let the 3 best bits of your share be given to me." And the Dagda gave in to that every night. But it was for the worse of it. But he was the worse for it. For what the blind man called a bit would be the size of a good pig, and with his 3 bits he would have full 1/3 of the whole. But one day, as the Dagda was in the trench, he saw his son Angus Og coming to him. "That is a good meeting," said Angus. "But what is on you? For you have no good appearance today." "There is a reason for that," said Dagda. "For every evening Cridabel, the blind man, takes a demand for 3 best bits of my share of food, and takes them from me." "I will give you an advice," said Angus. He put his hand in his bag, and then he took out 3 pieces of gold and gave them to him. "Put these 3 pieces of gold into the 3 bits you will give this evening to Cridabel," he said, "and they will be the best bits in the dish, and the gold will turn within him, and in that way he will die." That evening the Dagda did just that, and no sooner had Cridabel swallowed down the gold than he died. Some of the people then said to the king, "The Dagda has killed Cridabel, giving him some deadly herb." The king believed that, and he was angry against the Dagda, and he gave orders he should be put to death. But the Dagda said, "You're not giving the right judgment of a prince." And he told all that had happened, and how Cridabel used to say, "Give me the best bits before you, for my share is not good tonight." And on this night, he said, "The 3 pieces of gold were the best things before me, and I gave them to him, and he died." The king then gave orders to have the body cut open, and they found the gold inside it, and they knew it was the truth that Dagda had told. Angus came to him the next day and said, "Your work will soon be done, and when you are given your wages, take nothing. They may offer you till the cattle of Ireland are brought before you, and choose out a heifer, black and black-maned. That I will tell you the signs of." So when the Dagda had brought his work to an end, and they asked him what reward he wanted, he did as Angus had bidden him, and that seemed folly to Bres. He thought that Dagda would have asked for more than a heifer of him. There came a day at last. A poet came to look for hospitality at the king's house. Cora, son of Eton, poet of the Tuatha de Danaan. And it is how he was treated. He was put in a little dark, narrow house where there was no fire, or furniture, or bed, and for a feast 3 small cakes, and they were dry, and they were brought to him on a little dish. When he rose up on the morrow, he was in no way thankful, and as he was going across the green, he said, "Without food ready on a dish, without milk enough for a calf to grow on, without shelter, without light in the darkness of night, without enough to pay a storyteller. May that be the prosperity of Bres. And from that day on, there was no good luck for Bres. But he was going down forever after. And that was the first satire ever made in Ireland. Now as to Nuada. After his arm was struck off, he was sick for a while. And then Diancacht, the healer, made an arm of silver for him, with movement in every finger of it, and put it on him. And from that point on, he was called Nuada Argatlav, of the silver hand, forever after. Now Merrick, son of Diancacht, was a better hand at healing than his father, and had done many things. One day he met a young man having but one eye, a tiawer, and the young man said, "If you are a good physician, you will put an eye in the place of the eye I lost." "I could put the eye of that cat in your lap," said Merrick. "I would like that very much," said the young man. So Merrick put the cat's eye in his head, but he would have been better off without it. For when he wanted to sleep and take his rest, that is when the eye would open at the squeaking of the mice, or the flight of the birds, or the movement of the rushes. And when he was wanting to watch an army or a gathering, it was sure to be in a deep sleep. And Merrick was not satisfied with what his father had done to the king. And he took Nuada's own hand that had been struck off, and brought it to him, and set it in its place. And he said, "Joint to joint, and sinew to sinew." 3 days and 3 nights he was with the king. The first day he put his hand against his side, and the second day against his breast, till it was covered with skin. And the third day he put the bulrushes that were blackened in a fire on it. And at the end of that time the king was healed. But Diancacht was vexed when he saw his son doing a better job than himself, and he threw his sword at his head, and it cut the flesh. But the lad healed the wound by means of his skill. Then Diancacht threw it a second time, that it reached the bone, but the lad was able to cure the wound. Then he struck him the third time, and the fourth, till he cut out the brain, for he knew no physician could heal him after that blow. And Merrick died, and he buried him. And herbs grew up from his grave to the number of his joints and sinews, 365. And Arvik, his sister, came and spread out her cloak and laid out the herbs in it, according to their virtue. But Diancacht saw her doing that, and he came and he mixed up the herbs, so that no one knows all their right powers to this day. Then when the Tuatha de Danaan saw Nuada as well as he was before, they gathered together to Tiawer, where Bres was, and they bade him give up his kingship, for he had held it long enough. So he had to give it up, though he was not very willing, and Nuada was put back in the kingship again. There was a great vexation towards Bres then, and he searched his mind to know how he could be avenged on those that had put him out, and how he could gather an army against them. And he went to his mother, daughter of Delvith, and bade her tell him what his race was. "I know that well," she said, and she told him that his father was a king of the Fomor, Elatha, son of Dalbach, and that he came to her one time over a level sea in some great vessel that seemed to be of silver, but she could not see its shape, and he himself having the appearance of a young man with yellow hair, and his clothes sewed with gold, and 5 rings of gold about his neck. And she that had refused the love of all young men of her own people gave him her love. And she cried when he left her. And he gave her a ring from his hand and bade her give it only to the man whose finger it would fit. And he went away, then the same way he had come. And she brought out the ring to Bres, and he put it around his middle finger, and it fitted him well. And they went together to the hill where she saw the silver vessel coming, and down to the strand she and Bres and his people set out for the country of the Fomor. And when they came to that country, they found a great plain and many gatherings of people on it. And they went to the gathering that looked the best. And the people asked where they did come from. And they said they were come from Ireland. Have you hounds with you? They asked them. For it was the custom of that time, when strangers came to a gathering, to give them some friendly challenge. We have hounds, said Bres. So the hounds were matched against one another, and the hounds of Tuatha de Danaan were better than the hounds of the Fomor. Have you horses for a race? They asked. We have, said Bres. And the horses of the Tuatha de Danaan beat the horses of the Fomor. Then they asked if there were any among them that was a good hand with a sword, and they said Bres was the best. And when he put his hand to his sword, Elithon, his father, that was among them, knew the ring. And he asked, who was this young man? Then his mother answered him, and told the whole story, and that Bres was his own son. There was sorrow on his father then, and he said, what was it drove you out of the country you were king over? And Bres said, nothing drove me out but my own injustice and my own hardness. And I took away the treasures from the people, and their jewels, and their food itself. And there were never taxes put on them before I was their king. That is bad, said his father. It is of their prosperity. You had a right to think more than of your own kingship, and their goodwill be better than their curses, he said. And what is if you come to look for here? I am come to look for fighting men, said Bres, that I may take Ireland by force. You have no right to get it by injustice, when you could not keep it by justice, said his father. What advice do you have for me then? Said Bres. And Elithon bade him to go to the chief king of the Fomor, Balor of the Evil Eye, to see what advice and what help he would give him. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey. And if you enjoyed today's tale, please give us a thumbs up and comment. It really does help us. Slán go fóill. Bye for now.